Let's catch up with Pauline Hanson, now One Nation founder and leader, joining us live from Scenic Rim in Queensland. First up, Pauline, I have to get your thoughts on the Prime Minister's response to these anti-Semitic attacks in Melbourne and Sydney. It all seems to me, as I've made very clear, way too little and way too late.
Chris, you have summed it up perfectly as what I was going to say. I watched his interview this afternoon. I thought it was pathetic. I think it was too little, too late, and something should have been done about it October last year. He's done nothing to rein in the Greens in the Senate who wear that Palestinian shawl. Lydia Thorpe, her outbursts, and Fatima Hayman, they do absolutely nothing to rein them in. I wore a Jewish scarf in the chamber, and I was told to remove it, and otherwise I leave the chamber. So anyway, so I left the chamber. But the whole fact is, you're exactly right what you said, and I also said, nice guy, he will not make a leader, and I've been proven right, as you have been. He hasn't got what it takes. He's not a conviction politician.
What's your take on this debate? Share your opinion in the comments below and join the conversation. Do you agree or disagree with the arguments made?
He sits on the fence. He hasn't got good people around him. All his ministers are useless. What he's done here, he's been forced into having a media conference today with the Jewish community of where it's at the moment. They haven't done enough to deal with it. We have, and especially Chris also, bringing people in from the Gaza is the wrong thing to do. You have tensions there. There are tensions between two different religious groups and organisations. The Jewish people have not been responsible for any hatred in this country, but we've allowed, the Prime Minister has allowed, and the premiers, Labor premiers, have allowed for these protest rallies to happen in their streets, in the cities, all over the country, and nothing was done about it. The Jewish people were the ones who were pulled up, told to move on, and the hate preachers, nothing done about it. You were spot on, everything that you said. I totally agree with everything that you said.
Oh, I have a heavy heart about all this, Pauline, because this is why we called it out way back on October the 9th last year, because you could see unless this was stamped out early, it would get worse. Unless this was really ruled out by our political and law enforcement officers, this stuff would gather momentum and fester. And it breaks my heart because so many were calling on governments to do that. They have failed us, and now this stuff is festering to a level that we just could not have imagined in this country. Yep. I do need to move on to something else, because Peter Dutton said something else to my colleague Peter Credlin earlier in the week, where he's going to maintain, if he becomes Prime Minister, the practice he's adopted in opposition, that is standing in front of only one flag, the Australian flag. It seems incredible that such a statement could be controversial in this country, but it is. He's come under all sorts of criticism from the left and from the Labor government. And here's what his Shadow Indigenous Affairs Minister, Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price, has had to say about it.
What's your take on this debate? Share your opinion in the comments below and join the conversation. Do you agree or disagree with the arguments made?
When Peter and I delivered a press conference on October 14, when the referendum results came in, that is exactly what we did. We stood in front of just the Australian flag, because after that result particularly, it was evident to us that the Australian people want a united Australia where we are all represented by one flag.
Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price there. Now, Pauline Hanson, I assume you would agree wholeheartedly with this move. I seem to remember a famous photo of you completely draped in the Australian flag.
I was in 1996, and that's how proud I am of our Australian flag. And Chris, I have said it. I was furious when they brought in the three flags into the chamber, into the Senate. I think it's wrong, and it should not be allowed, three flags. We are one flag, one nation, and one people, and that's how it should be. We are one nation. That's what I've said all along. But the whole fact, it is divisive. And I hope that Peter Dutton does see through with that if he becomes Prime Minister of this country. Get rid of the flags out of the chamber. Unless if you want to put a referendum to the people of Australia, let them have their say on it, whether they want the three flags. But get rid of it on government buildings, and also the rainbow flag. That's another one I am angry about, the rainbow flag as well. So anyway, no, I totally agree.
One flag out. Yeah. one flag is enough for most countries. It does seem a weird situation. Pauline, thanks for joining us throughout the year. It's been great to have your regular company and insights on the program. We've agreed and we've disagreed, but it's always great to have the discussion. So Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you, and look forward to catching up in 2025.
Same to you. Thanks, Chris.
This exchange wasn't just another political interview. It turned into a full-blown indictment of leadership, national direction, and the growing tension inside Australia's political and cultural landscape. From the very beginning, Pauline Hanson set the tone with force. There was no hesitation, no diplomatic framing. She immediately dismissed the government's response to anti-Semitic incidents as too little, too late. But what made her opening statement more powerful was not just the criticism itself, but the certainty behind it. In her framing, this wasn't a recent failure. It was a failure that had been building for months, even years, while warning signs were ignored and political hesitation replaced decisive action. She pushed the argument further, shifting from reaction to accusation. According to her, leadership hasn't just been slow, it has been absent in key moments where intervention was required. She pointed to Parliament, protest activity, and internal political decisions as examples of inconsistency in enforcement and accountability. In her view, this has created a situation where certain actions are tolerated in one context but punished in another, raising deeper questions about fairness and consistency in governance. But the intensity of the exchange escalated when the discussion moved beyond immediate political decisions and into the structure of national identity itself. What began as a debate over anti-Semitism quickly evolved into a broader argument about unity, symbolism, and national cohesion. Hanson aligned herself firmly with the idea of a single national flag as the only unifying symbol that should represent Australia in official and institutional settings. She described the presence of multiple flags in parliamentary spaces as divisive, arguing that it weakens the sense of a shared national identity. This is where the conversation shifted from policy critique into ideological conflict. For Hanson, the issue is not symbolic diversity, it is national fragmentation. She framed the use of multiple flags not as representation, but as separation, suggesting that a nation should project one identity rather than multiple overlapping ones. Her stance extended beyond symbolism into cultural direction. She expressed frustration with what she sees as increasing division within public institutions, arguing that Australia is moving away from unity and toward identity-based separation. In her narrative, the solution is not compromise. It is simplification. One flag, one identity, one national representation. The most striking part of the exchange was the tone. There was no ambiguity in her delivery, no attempt to soften claims or introduce nuance. Everything was presented in absolute terms: failure, division, urgency, and correction. That kind of framing transforms a political interview into something closer to a verdict being delivered in real time. And that is what makes moments like this resonate so strongly in the public space. Because it's not just about what is being said, it's about how definitively it is being said. In modern political media, certainty often carries more impact than complexity, and this exchange leaned fully into that dynamic. On the other side, the interview structure itself highlighted a broader tension: the gap between government response and public perception of urgency. While officials often emphasize process, consultation, and institutional response, critics like Hanson frame those same processes as delay, hesitation, or avoidance. That contrast is what drives the entire narrative tension of the discussion. One side focused on procedural governance, the other focused on immediate action and visible accountability. By the end of the exchange, the conversation had expanded far beyond its original topic. What started with questions about anti-Semitism ended in a broader argument about national unity, political leadership, and the symbolic representation of an entire country. And that is why this moment stands out, not because it introduced entirely new issues, but because it connected multiple existing tensions into a single, emotionally charged narrative. Leadership versus delay. Unity versus division, symbolism versus identity. In that framing, this wasn't just an interview, it was a snapshot of a much larger political and cultural struggle playing out in real time, one that continues to shape how Australia sees itself and how its leaders are judged by the public watching closely from the outside.